maybe 70% of the cannabis community have no idea how we got to legalization.
The first LGBTQ cannabis meetup at MJ BizCon is happening, and it's long overdue. I'm Jason Reposa. After 25 years in tech and cannabis, I host High Functioning to show it actually works. Today's guests are Lindsay Roth, CEO of Confection, and Rich Magaña, founder of Cannabis. They're bringing compassion back into cannabis, from the AIDS crisis roots of legalization to building community and visibility for queer operators today.
People are shocked that there are so few queer-owned brands.
LGBTQI folks are twice as likely to consume cannabis than their straight counterpart.
We get into how edibles navigate Connecticut's strict packaging rules,
You can only have a 1 inch by 1 inch logo.
how history gets erased and reclaimed, and how both brands are rewriting inclusion into the modern cannabis industry.
Cannabis Buyers Club, underground dispensaries, leaf floors, build community without stigma, and to be able to be normal.
This is real community over corporate. Let's dive in. Chew, wait, hope. Hard pass. Pocket uses micro and nano-emulsification, so effects show up in about a quarter hour. It's the gummy experience without the gummy lag. Pocket your chill and keep moving.
I'm Lindsay Roth, and I'm the CEO of Confection. We're a Connecticut-based cannabis brand, family-owned and operated, and we produce currently edibles in different ratios, and the biggest differentiator is everything is vegan, gluten-free, no artificial colors, flavors, or dyes, and we put strain-specific terpenes in our recipes so that you can really tailor the effects to your desired outcome.
Hi, my name is Rich Magaña. I'm the founder of Cannabis. We're a movement really based out of New England that really focuses on preserving queer cannabis history. And we like to do that through education. We do that through programming. We do that through events, like the events that we've hosted, and really kind of focus on uplifting the LGBT community within the cannabis space, given the robust history that we have in the space advocating for cannabis legalization.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're definitely going to get into Connecticut and all the crazes around packaging and different rules. Our audience is Massachusetts based primarily. However, we do have Connecticut listeners and all of New England and New York and New Jersey listeners as well. So we're definitely going to get into that one. But the queer cannabis side is super interesting because you're talking about from a historical aspect. And I also noted you guys are heading up to MJ Biz also, right?
I got excited about that.
I got an email from Todd about that. Oh, hey, we're fundraising to get like a whole group together.
Yeah, we just had our fundraising kickoff yesterday in Boston. And so we are pulling together some programming called, Powering Progress within the cannabis space. And so Queer Cannabis is going to be a part of 3 activations, which we're really excited about. It's actually the first time that MJ BizCon has given a platform to the LGBT community. So we're going to be hosting the first LGBTQ meetup at MJ BizCon on the convention floor, which we're really excited about.
That's the first? Wow, that's amazing.
For sure. Exactly. And then additionally, we are also going to be hosting the first LGBTQ happy hour. It's going to be on the 4th, I believe, of December, and it's offsite. And again, the first time that MJ BizCon is giving space to the LGBT community to make sure there's a safe space when they're at MJ BizCon. So we're really excited about that. And then last but not least, I was given the opportunity outside of Queer Cannabis and as Rich Magaña to lead up the state takeover. Yeah, so every state that has a cannabis program in North America, they get an opportunity to kind of be front and center and do some type of programming or some type of panel to talk about like all the great things that are going on in their state. So it's kind of like that, state focus that we can just talk about all the great things that are happening. So what I decided to do is for what this platform is to talk about all the great partnerships that Queer and Cannabis has had throughout the last year and a half of our official existence. Because there definitely has been a lot of focus on, building out programming for marginalized communities. And then when you go into the aspect of like history, for instance, a lot of folks don't understand, how we got to cannabis legalization. And it was a direct response to the HIV/AIDS epidemic in the late 80s and early 90s.
High Functioning isn't your average cannabis podcast. It's where business, wellness, and culture collide with honest convos from people actually doing the work. Tap in at High Functioning Show and hit subscribe so you don't miss a drop. Now, back to the episode.
Take me through that. So, because you had set the historical context, because as I don't really follow that world, as well as I didn't really follow too much of the history of cannabis, to be honest, because, I consumed, but it wasn't like, hey, let me go learn in the history books of like what actually happened, or through, story or whatever.
Yeah.
What, so how did that all come about? You said it's a reaction from HIV/AIDS.
Yeah, exactly. So, and most people within the industry have no idea. You know what I mean? Like we, in our current state, like in our current times, we have the luxury to be able to purchase if you're 21 and over,
right?
And be able to have ounces in our car and be able to go to the movie,
That's
sort of beach and like partake. But it wasn't always like that. You know what I mean? And so I think it's important for us as an industry to really recognize how we got here, and unfortunately within the community, I'd say, every state that we kind of have a reach into, I would say that maybe 70% of the cannabis community have no idea how we got to legalization.
That's a fair estimate, I would say, because like I said, I'm, and this is an education for me.
Sure.
Because I feel like I'm ignorant about a lot of this stuff, right? Which is one of the reasons why I really wanted you to come on, because I was like, I think there's a lot of people, like you're estimating 70% of people who don't really know the foundational stories that kind of led to where we are today.
Absolutely.
And created ultimately, multi-billion-dollar industry.
Absolutely. And so, during the HIV/AIDS crisis, we had, thousands and thousands of folks, primarily gay men, who were contracting HIV/AIDS. There was not a lot of government assistance. There was not a lot of government backing to figure out why are Americans dying at a large rate. And it's primarily affecting gay men, Black and brown folks, as well as sex workers. So during that time and during that political, administration, the people that were affected by HIV/AIDS were not folks that the government really wanted to help out. Or
they didn't care about those.
Exactly.
They were just like,
exactly. So
if their problem, like, who cares about this movie?
If it's not affecting, our community, our straight community, our white community, then, this is kind of and in so many ways, it became like this is God's way of taking care of the situation. And so you had it
from the religious lens of like cleansing or something like
Exactly. And so, as queer people were dying, we did what history tells us all the time. When you have marginalized folks who are being beaten down and, not given access to medicine, not giving the access to be them or to flourish as their individual self, we had to band together. And so, during that time, a lot of, gay men, a lot of lesbian women, that's another story that people don't really know. Lesbian women were at the aid of gay men, because when HIV/AIDS was hitting, it became the gay plague. And you had a lot of governments saying this is only affecting these people, et cetera, et cetera. And it was still it was a new disease. People were afraid to touch someone, to hug someone.
Yeah.
It was, and you also have to understand that during that time, these folks, primarily gay men, didn't have a huge community. They didn't have a strong family. For the most part, once they came out, they're on their own. They're outcasts. So then you have, these folks who are young, are in search for stability, for love, for human kindness.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so, we banded together, and lesbians were the first ones to say, like, hey, like, you're sick. You are my brother. You are my sister. I'm going to help you. And they were a huge part of the healing process, and making sure that these folks weren't dying without love and care, compassion. Exactly. And so that kind of like started a big conversation of like, okay, people are dying. What are we going to do about it?
Right.
And during this time, a lot of caregivers, lesbian caregivers, were noticing that their patients, when they were smoking or when they were ingesting, that it was helping with like pain, right? It was helping with quality of life, because again, these folks didn't really have a lot of family to lean into, and then they were given this death sentence, and they were completely just out there on their own.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So quality of life was also like a big thing there, and so cannabis was helping with uplifting that mood. It was also helping with, appetite. Because during that time, part of HIV/AIDS, one of the cycles is wasting syndrome. It's when your body starts to reject and you're not hungry and you're literally just kind of starving yourself. And with cannabis, patients started to realize that I started getting the appetite.
Exactly.
I started getting munchies. And during that time, it was 3 pounds would determine if you were going to live much longer or not. So,
Because you're a waste.
Exactly. And so, the community started to lean in on cannabis as being the only medicine that was available for these folks. And then we had people like Mary Rathbun, who is an iconic, legendary trailblazer within this whole movement. And it was said that she would spend her like $1,600 Social Security check on brownie mix. And then she would score all the weed from all of her gay friends, and she would make dozens and dozens of brownies and drop them off to different AIDS wards just to make sure that it was compassion,
Right.
and that people were having medicine. And so, we have stories like that are so important to the whole, legalization of cannabis. And it's cannabis history.
Right.
We can even call it history, right?
Yeah, it's history.
It is history.
And that's right. So because even back then since it was so new, there wasn't like a standard operating procedure for like how to care for any of this. Right? It's just like, okay, what do we do? Give them some Tylenol and say go home, I guess.
Exactly. So it was just really just trying to figure out how to keep these folks alive.
Right.
And cannabis was one of the main proponents. So we had people like Mary Rathbun. We also had a gentleman named Dennis Peron, who everyone should know who he is. He's like the godfather of cannabis legalization. And his partner, Jonathan West, during this time, contracted HIV/AIDS. And Dennis Peron, a queer advocate, who was also a veteran, had used cannabis throughout his life, especially with PTSD from being in the war. And so he then adapted to that, and he was, making sure that Jonathan, his partner, was being medicated, and he started to see firsthand what that was doing and how it was really helping during such a dark time. And then so that was really the beginning stages of this huge focus to make sure that the community advocates to release this plant, because this plant has medicinal values, and this plant is helping people who are extremely sick have the best quality of life that they possibly could have.
So then where does it go from there, I guess? So it's like you have these figures who are coming out with compassion and trying to do what they can.
Yeah.
Somebody's like, we should free the plant.
Yeah.
Like, how do we do this? In the medical sense, like, this is very helpful. Like, where does it go from there? Is there like now, like, because do people march on DC? Like, how did...
Great question.
Yeah.
Great question. So from that point, once they realized that cannabis was working and cannabis was definitely helping, then it now became, how do we band together and make sure that the cannabis is available for HIV/AIDS patients throughout like San Francisco, right? Because this is where it kind of first started. And so, they really focused on making sure that there was, grassroots dispensaries. So I'm sure everyone at this point has heard about the Cannabis Buyers Club, which was an underground dispensary that was ran by Dennis Peron. And it was 3 floors of just consumption, drag performances, card playing, community building. And it was a great way for folks who had HIV/AIDS to be able to like congregate, build community without stigma, and to be able to be normal, right? As normal as it possibly could be.
Isn't that the movie?
Yeah, there's also a movie that was loosely based by that. But yeah, there's so much. There's even a documentary that we screened not too long ago called "Join the Club," which is an unreleased documentary that talks about this whole movement, it's unbelievable. Every time that we did a screening in Boston and we did a screening in New Jersey, we're going to be doing a screening in West Hollywood in February that's funded by the city of West Hollywood, because it really just shows, everything that was happening during this time. And it's such a harsh, like, realization now that some of the things that we fought for, like medical access, is now being rolled back.
Right. And, I think about the Massachusetts market, and one of the things I had said when I first entered the market, because I had spoken to An old friend of mine, happened to be an oncologist now. I knew her from high school.
Mm-hmm.
She messaged me. She goes, "I wish your drinks could just be stronger because I got a lot of patients who could use that stuff.
Yeah.
They don't want to smoke anything."
Yeah.
And I remember being like, if I could just get like a manufacturing license for medical, I would totally be making stronger drinks right now.
Yeah.
The problem is you had to be vertical. And you still technically have to be vertical. I know there's legislature to kind of wind that part of it, but like vertical integration, that requirement alone means $10 million build out, because you got to build the cultivation, the retail, everything else. I'm like, no, I don't want to own retail. I don't want to own cultivation. I just want to make my products.
Mm-hmm.
So I think from that lens, being like, man, there's so many more people we could help if we could just make stronger products,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
Because that appetite thing is so huge for cancer patients also.
Absolutely.
Because you're wasting away. And like you don't have an appetite and you're sitting in bed and you're just like, what am I, you know?
And you need food, you need nourishment to move forward.
Yeah.
And so just to kind of go back to, you know, what you were saying about what happened after, you know,
Like
that
people are
did we,
science at DC and all that stuff.
yeah. So and as it became a full on like political movement. So we had like Mayor Rathen, we had Dennis Peron, we had the Cannabis Buyers Club, all speaking of like, this is medicine. We need to free this plant because the government is doing nothing. So, you know, there was a lot of, you know, marching in the streets. There was signs. There was a lot of just grassroots political activity going on.
Is this California?
This is California. This is California, San Francisco, specifically. And, you know, Dennis Peron was like, you know, really, really good friends with Harvey Milk. Those of you guys who aren't familiar with Harvey Milk was the first openly gay elected official in the city of San Francisco, who unfortunately was murdered because of his sexuality. But it's a story for another podcast. But, you know, they were friends. And so, you know, Harvey Milk knew what HIV/AIDS was doing to the community in San Francisco. He knew that the community needed to do something. And so that's when Dennis Peron and Harvey Milk really started to focus on how can we help each other out, right? So unbeknownst to a lot of historians, actually a lot of the drug money that Dennis Peron was making during that time funded a big portion of Harvey Milk's campaign. Which is kind of crazy, right? Like to know that cannabis money had funded the first, you know, a gay elected official in North America. And so, you know, just kind of like understanding those parallels as well, you know, how it all kind of links up. And so, you know, Harvey Milk and Dennis Peron were really like focused on how can we change the laws, right? Because we need to march, we need to make sure that people understand our positioning, but we also need to make sure we change things legally.
Mm-hmm.
So what Dennis Peron did was he really started to work on changing the law within San Francisco, because at that time, San Francisco was heavily gay. And he knew that there would be the numbers to pass.
Numbers to be able to do it.
Exactly. And so he put together Prop Q, which was basically to legalize medicinal marijuana in the city of San Francisco, and passed.
It passed.
So at that point, they were like, okay, so if we can get this legislation to pass in San Francisco, then we can get this type of legislation to pass in the state of California.
Right.
And so, you know, it was a lot of advocacy, a lot of like building this campaign. And again, like, you know, during that time, mass media, the general population, they weren't trying to free cannabis. And they certainly were trying to make the LGBTQIA life easy.
Yeah. Right.
So, you know, there was a ton of challenges.
Resistance must have been.
Exactly. And so, you know, when Prop Q passed and San Francisco started operating just more efficiently and was able to distribute more and more cannabis, you know, the community started to see a shift. People were starting to live longer. Quality of life was stronger. Community was building so that it was helping, you know, build a coalition that was going to like be able to really advocate for any portion of a marginalized life of the LGBTQ individual. And so, you know, they once like, you know, Big Pharma kind of started to see that there was some type of movement of cannabis legalization. They were like, well, you know, maybe we need to get into it. And so there was like, you know, a pharma person. There was a guy who he was actually one of the creators of I think it was like International Soup Company or something. in like the 90s, he was like, this actually makes sense. Like, we need to look into this. And if we could help legalize marijuana in the state of California, this could be huge.
Right.
For their own,
I was gonna say for their own purposes.
For their own purpose.
As their own motivation.
And so, the gays and the politicians and the money guys had a conversation, and everyone heard their side of why this was important, and they banded forces and they started to work together. They had a campaign manager who was well equipped to be able to like handle a project of this scale. And you had, legislators working on their agenda. You had the queer folks really kind of forming out that legislation to make sure that it really benefited the community. In 1996, Prop 215 was passed by a narrow margin, making it the first state in North America to legalize cannabis.
Year was that in?
It was in 96.
Wow.
Yeah. In 1996, and it all started out, at people dying of HIV/AIDS.
It's a way to connect it right there. Absolutely.
And as their campaign became stronger, they really started to like open up to like other, other illnesses like cancer, like glaucoma, and it passed because of the compassion of people who understood or maybe knew someone who was dying of a deadly disease. Anyone who has ever seen someone waste away. Trying to find the medicine to make them feel good is just human nature.
And you found something and it works. Now let's get more people. I remember the first time I think I ever heard about medical marijuana was because in the news, there was a guy who had a card. He had the medical card or something like that. And he was in the front of the White House or something like that back in the 90s.
Yeah.
And I think maybe he had been arrested like 30 times at that point kind of thing, but he's like, I've got this card that says I can do this. And he was just like openly considered part of the White House. I remember that image sticks in my head still. Like, I don't know if he was in a wheelchair or something like that, but it was very much just like, I've got this card, you can't take this away from me. It's just like federally, like I can do this.
Yeah. And I mean, that's just like, one like vision that you have or a memory that you have, and it was obviously impactful. You remember that moment. It was a powerful moment. And so for queer and cannabis, it's important for us to educate the community on HIV/AIDS and what that did and how, thousands of people lost their lives. And there was a lot of people marching in those streets to give us access that we have today.
Yeah. And I think about that. But I also think like one of the quotes that I'd heard recently from Jeff Ross from ICS was the kumbaya effect of cannabis, right? Everybody's like, everything's great.
Yeah.
There's got to be people in that community that are just like against weed though, right?
Yeah.
Do you face that anytime?
I think
I was just surrounded by it.
I'm surrounded by industry.
So he's like, yeah, let's go.
Yeah. So with like queer and cannabis, they have to have like, there's an affinity of cannabis, but we do run into folks who are sober, completely sober.
Right.
I'm California sober. So like I will smoke weed, but I don't drink or any other drugs. And that's just my choice and whatnot. But I think that, when there are those moments of like someone part of my community who's not really into it, then it's kind of like, all right, well, I don't like, certain sushi.
Yeah. I'm not going to market.
It's not my thing.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And that's fine because there's so much more to our connection than just cannabis.
Well, that's the thing. That's what I was saying. It goes deeper, obviously, than the cannabis side. The cannabis being the plant that helps the affected population.
Yeah.
But just switching over to you, Lindsay, like, how did you get involved, I guess, with...
So when we came to market almost a year ago in Connecticut, Rich reached out because he had seen that we were the first and only queer-owned cannabis brand operating in the state. And I immediately wanted to team up and get involved with him in helping him not only get a foot in the door in Connecticut, in our market, which is much more concentrated, small, and still maturing in comparison to other markets like Mass.
Yeah, it's so new.
It's so new.
So are you still considered the only queer cannabis company?
Yep, we are.
In Connecticut.
Yep, we are. And
how many brands are in Connecticut now? Or like how many operators?
I mean, there's hundreds, hundreds dominantly. How many stores? About 65, I think, last I checked. And so in comparison, yes, exactly. The shelf space is, really tight, especially when trying to get a foot in the door. but partnering up with someone like Rich, where you can not only help, educate and really reiterate the history of the plant and how that goes hand in hand with the AIDS crisis in the 80s, but bringing it forward so that you can provide a service in a way to dispensaries or other partners that we work with. And so an example is for Pride Month, we partnered with a local dispensary in Connecticut, and Rich came, I was there, and we just had a pop-up where people could come in and write letters of appreciation and support that he then delivered to gay elders and queer elders. And
yeah, it was a great opportunity to be able to utilize that platform, utilize that dispensary partnership. And this was during Pride Month. And so, oftentimes, LGBTQ elders are forgotten. And kind of what I just talked about with the history, elders are very important to queer and cannabis. They're very important to make sure that we don't leave anyone behind and that we acknowledge and we lift up these folks who have had it much harder than I have. They saw their brothers and sisters and friends drop. And a lot of them, when you talk about, the 80s or the 90s, there's all a look of fright. It reminds me of whenever you speak to someone about 9/11 who was there, there's just this trauma look that you get. And that's very similar when I talk to an elder about, the 80s and 90s. It was not a good time. It was a very scary time. You know what I mean? So it's important to be able to give back to them. So Lindsay was saying,
there was a letter writing campaign that says,
they could come in and decorate cards. It was Shangri-La in South Norwalk that we worked with.
Shangri-La?
No, there's 4.
Okay.
Yeah, there's 4. So they're a chain that we sell in and that we are happy to partner with. And I think it was really encouraging because you host these things and aren't really sure, especially when there's the LGBTQ label of it, what kind of reception you're going to get. You always hope for the best, but we just don't know until you do it. And it was great.
Yeah, it comes down to the promotion side of it, like marketing it in front of the right people and stuff like that. Shangri-La obviously can do their part as well.
Yeah.
They have their email list, SMS list to get people to come out. So and
it was such a special moment too, because when people walked in, they're expecting to buy a pre-roll, bounce, and then once they came in, they saw a craft table with stickers and rhinestones and glue and just all the shit that everyone wants. They were like, "What's going on?" And we're like, "Oh, we're making cards for LGBTQ elders for Pride Month. We want to make a card for that." And it was like, okay, sure. I mean, and then once they were seated, then it was we had an opportunity to just talk about the history, talk about, kind of what's going on in the world and really just connect them to something that's important.
And so what other types of events, I guess, so that's one example. What other types of events? Obviously you get the MJ Biz side of it too, but locally, I guess, because I always focus on the local. My LinkedIn post the other day was very much just MJ Biz is fantastic. If you're trying to be a national exposure in queer and cannabis, national exposure makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, it's great exposure.
But as a single state operator, I'm why would I go to BizCon? That's not going to help my sales in Massachusetts.
No, absolutely. And I think to that point, it made sense for us to partner with Rich, not only because we're the only queer-owned canna brand, but it was really important for us within the first year of operation to have a give back product on shelves. And so we launched Rainbow Parade, which is a rainbow sherbet flavored gem. It's a nice blend of THC with CBD and CBG, along with Blue Dream live resin terpenes. And a portion of the proceeds of that package goes towards Equality Connecticut, which is an advocacy group in Connecticut, working to improve the lives of LGBT.
Fantastic. Yeah, and so I want to get into the products in a second, so we'll sort of shift to that in a second because I'm super curious about all this packaging. But the other types of events that are local, I guess. Is there anything coming up more recently that we could check out?
So we do a lot in Massachusetts. Peron's our home market. It's where I live. And so we do a lot with Rooted In Dispensary. So we do joint rolling classes. We had a series of joint rolling classes all through summer.
I could use a class.
All of us. I could still. I mean, it's one of those time honored traditions that it gives you the opportunity to like touch and feel and create.
That's just, it's such it's part of the experience.
Exactly.
And I think people just skip it now.
Yeah.
Right. They're like, I just got a pre-roll, I'm done.
Exactly. And I get it. Like, it's convenience, right?
Yeah.
But, we wanted to make sure that, again, like leaning into history, leaning into, all the folks that kind of like, created this industry for us, really kind of going into those basics of like how to roll a joint.
Yeah.
But in our joint rolling class, we taught how to roll a great joint, but we also talked about history. We talked about communities. We talked about shopping with a conscience. You know what I mean? So, which is extremely important, But so we've done joint rolling classes. We do Queer Boston walking tours during the summertime.
And you point out like historical.
Yeah, because Boston has a ton of history, queer history. A lot of really great things, a lot of really great legislation was created here. So we talk about that. We also do art classes, because art is therapy. We'll do collage classes, and we'll focus on, advocacy, whether it's LGBTQ advocacy or cannabis advocacy, and really just learn how to infuse our community and what's important to us in ways that are fun. And it's a way to be able to like, again, build that community. All of our classes, like they're a bunch of like a hodgepodge of everybody. It's like, you have like the influencers here, you have people that I met like at some clubs. I mean, people who've come to like our screenings, like they're just a bunch of random folks who believe wholeheartedly that cannabis is medicine and believes that cannabis has helped generations of queer folks. I oftentimes think about for my community, what ails us? It's trauma, it's depression, and it's anxiety. And then if you look at cannabis and like, one of the main things that cannabis helps with, that's all of the above things.
Yeah.
And so
Boxes on that one.
Exactly. And so, it's a different experience when my community, for the most part, consumes. It's a way to heal. It's a way to be able to connect, it's a way to be able to like drop that anxiety because the world is crazy right now.
Yeah.
And we're able to like meet each other where we need to meet.
When it comes to the actual like end goals for queer and cannabis, what does that look like? I know advocacy is obviously like that's what it is, but I don't know anything really about advocacy organizations so much. Like, is there a specific metric that you look at to be like, all right, we're making progress on this specific goal? Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Like, should there be, so right now there's 5 queer brands in Massachusetts or whatever. Yeah. And now we need to get it to 15. Like, what numbers do you look at, or what's your guiding light?
Great question. So, I think the first guiding light, or the first kind of like a response to like, we're doing our job, is all the partnerships and all the collaborations that we're doing. You know what I mean? Like, we've done strong partnerships all over, like on both coasts, New York, New Jersey, Maryland, PA, Connecticut. You're traveling. We're traveling. And it all is to really kind of unpack this history. Right. Because history, is one of those things that really, for the most part, helps us not repeat the same mistakes. And we are living in a time right now where history is like being deleted, or just being deleted. Yeah. Or denied.
So when it comes to, I guess, like, for the longevity of this specific organization, like, where are your funding sources? Is it like partnerships with brands, like the kickback to like, every time you buy a pack of gummies, $1 goes towards queer cannabis or whatever it might be? Is there dispensary partners? Is it like what?
It's dispensary partners. It's legal cannabis. Legal cannabis has done a fantastic job at supporting, what we do, and really kind of using their platform to lift up this marginalized community. It gives us
legal cannabis being a company, or being, you mean just
legal cannabis? Yeah, like legal cannabis within the industry. And so, they understand the importance of it, but you need to understand the education behind it. Yeah. It's not just like a poor person saying, hey, give me some money because I want to be able to like throw a yoga event to help healing. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like, well, let's go back into the history of it. Let me show you why this is important. And legal cannabis has done a fantastic job right now. As most of us know, like, especially in Massachusetts, the cannabis industry is a little unhinged, and it's kind of a race to the bottom. That's me being kind. Yeah. So, we are starting to see a little bit of a rollback.
Well, that's where I'm getting with. So the longevity of the organization, Current Cannabis, like, as you continue to operate and evolve and like, throw different events and stuff like that, like everything needs funding. At the end of the day, we live in a capitalist world that needs funding in order to continue to exist. So someone has to pay your salary and somebody has to pay for the, pop-up people and go people, whatever. Like that primarily comes through the dispensaries and brands then? You're saying? Okay. Yeah.
I also think Rich does a great job of, like he said, whenever there is an event or an effort happening, community is really at the core of everything that they are doing. A great example is MeCan in Massachusetts this year. You did a kickoff party the night before the conference started, and it was just a really nice way to set the tone and meet people, both in the community and allies. It was at a queer bar. It was
Danny's.
Yeah, Danny's.
Queer bar on Newbury.
And going back to the history.
Exactly. And one of like 20-something lesbian-owned bars in the country.
It's like 6.
Which is, I know.
It's like 6. It's one of like 6
going.
lesbian-owned bars in the country. Yeah.
It's just,
that seemed really low.
Yeah. It's like, it's an issue. And but again, like bringing people together around the plant, but then also finding ways for us to just make connections and friendships. And then also before a big industry event like NECAN that can be overwhelming for first-time attendees or people who are just looking for their space where they belong. Like it is that work is monumental, and just
I feel like there's a lot of this, I think that goes to be said or into like the women's portion of cannabis as well. That's why they have women in cannabis. All these things, because minority communities, I guess you mean, or marginalized communities, it's like it's having that safe space.
Yeah, and when you look at the state of like Massachusetts, it's about 75% of folks within industry are all white male, and then you look at like statistics with Black and brown. I think it's the last data I looked at, it was 8% of brown folks in the industry, 7 Black. And then you look at, marginalized folks, and, you look at like, previous convictions, you look at like the most vulnerable when it comes to these crazy, cannabis laws and nonsense, directly affected. So, we find ourselves like trying to advocate, right, and trying to make sure that we are lifting each other up.
Well, if you're into cannabis, entrepreneurship, or just like hearing from people who actually build things, check out High Functioning. It's real talk with founders, operators, and big thinkers. No fluff, just game. New episodes drop every Friday, and you can subscribe and listen at highfunctioning.show. All right, let's get back to the show.
What's a good percentage, I would say, of like where should we be as a percentage of a whole as an industry, whether it's like we need to have 20 brands that are queer owned, because we talk about bars, clubs and stuff like that. But like, is there like a number that you're trying to go to, or is it like at the end of the day, like people are going to start businesses, whether they, some people are entrepreneurs, some people aren't entrepreneurs.
Sure.
I think if you're queer or straight.
Yeah. I think that like that number, and that's such a hypothetical. I couldn't give that number because it goes to it's beyond that though, because you look at like access to like capital, you look at access. There's so much more. Like when you look at these marginalized brands, you know what I mean? They're not set up for success.
Yeah.
And
we had this conversation in my last pod actually. And so one of the things that I think is like at the end of the day, you're running a business, and we live in a capitalist world, and you have to be, in order to keep the lights on in your cultivation, you need to have some revenue or income coming back in. And so you could be super idealistic and try not to compromise on the majority of your kind of like beliefs, or all of your beliefs if you're lucky. But at the end of the day, like you still have a customer to serve. And sometimes the customer is the store too. And the store is like, it doesn't sell fast enough. I'm going to swap you up for somebody else who can sell faster. Right. So because
that's a strategy.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. That's
a strategy.
One way to go about it. So that's why it's like in the podcast I just had with Mike Honeywell, it was really about like how there was this big promise in cannabis, right? And now you're seeing rollback of funding. There's a big promise for, under appreciated communities, disadvantaged communities, disadvantaged businesses, that, cannabis is for everybody and kumbaya and like we're all going to make it and all those other things. But that's not the reality of business, right? Everybody's going to make it, right?
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to exogenous factors that you have no control over, such as federal legalization.
Yep.
Now that's really federal legalization, I think, would be really great for your organization because now the kind of like it's been unhandcuffed in a sense. Now, of course, you're still going to have that 70% white male dominated kind of like industry, but carving out like a portion of the industry towards to be able to support organizations like yours and to continue that advocacy, I think might be beneficial. But for brands like ours, it's kind of like if we go federal legal, like, do we have enough footing to be able to exist against like a giant MSO who's just like, hey, we're just going to take all your SKUs and we're going to do it ourselves. And now we're going to send it across the country. It's like, I'm done.
Yeah. I think that there's also some a good talking point to even discuss like, building bridges. Like, you're kind of saying like, how can I gauge what's that number? Like, for success, whatnot. Right now our priorities are, since we're at the building stages, is building bridges, is sharing knowledge, learning how to like coexist with organizations, really leaning in like, with Lindsay, right? Lindsay, Peron brand, only one in Connecticut. When you look at statistics, it's a rough moment. It's a rough moment for everyone.
Well,
but then you have to like acknowledge some of the
and people are shocked when they hear that too.
Yeah.
I didn't realize.
That there are so few queer-owned brands in general in the cannabis space,
especially
given the connection of the history, but also with consumption.
Yeah. But when you look at consumption, queer folks or LGBTQI folks are twice as likely to consume cannabis than their straight counterparts.
Okay. And again, it goes back to what you were saying, the things that the plant addresses, trauma, anxiety, depression.
But you also have to think too, like with marginalized communities, cannabis it's a medicine. Most, there's a lot of marginalized communities who don't have access to like medicine, like, a doctor or a prescription. So, when you look at history, marginalized folks have always leaned into, marginal or alternative medicine like cannabis because that was available.
Right.
Exactly.
So then the pharmacy.
Yeah, because because
the doctor.
Exactly. So it's kind of like the school of hard knocks. You know what I mean? And so you have these communities that have relied on this, and then now I think the industry is saying like, where are those brands that represent the consumers that are there? Right. Data shows that they're there. History shows that there's a correlation. So where is that visibility?
But I think that goes into the brown and black communities as well, because I know Julio Vasquez from Temescal, but also runs Ultra Premium Gas. He's just like, we're focused on that Latino kind of population, and that's what we care about, and that's what we're supporting and stuff like that. Do you find that people are buying your products because they identify with it?
Absolutely. I mean, when people come up to us at a pop-up or an event and they learn about us, I mean, in addition to just trying some sober samples of our products,
sober samples. We used to call it uninfused.
Yes.
Sober
samples. Feel free to use.
Steal that.
It's like every year the industry has a different.
I know, exactly.
Sober samples.
It's candy.
Yeah.
But when they learn about us, they're like, oh, and you're queer owned and you're woman owned. Oh my gosh, this is great.
Right.
And I think that there are, there is a desire for more inclusivity, especially when you look at the makeup of millennials and Gen Z becoming more and more diverse. I just think that there is this desire to reach out and want to support. But I think where Rich comes in with not only the educational component and doing the work within the industry, but then also, expanding that and making that reach go into the consumer base, because that's where you actually can affect change.
Right.
If you were talking about, doing a campaign where, educating consumers on talking points that they can ask at their local dispensary. Where is your LGBTQ section? Where is, your minority owned legacy market section? Like trying to carve out spaces by simply requesting it, because at the end of the day, they are the customers that are being served.
Exactly. Their dollar is as good as anybody else's dollar. But with their dollars, by saying, where's the section? So
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think that's super important, because we do have to, form these alliances in organizations like Cannabis help, kind of bring people together. At the end of the day, I always have this existential threat of some giant company coming in and being like, hey, we're going to just take you out. But if the consumer's walking into the store and looking for products, I think that's going to obviously that'll get buyers to be like, oh, we should keep this on the shelf.
Yeah.
Instead.
Absolutely.
And, building community, you know what I mean? And like making sure, and, when you look at other industries like, fashion and beauty, we have conscious consumers. We will buy a certain lipstick for breast cancer month. We will buy a certain product. So these are
Exactly.
These are so we know that there are conscious consumers out there, and this industry, the cannabis industry is so new that we have this marginalized folks like our organizations, our brands like ours have a unique opportunity to really kind of like firm up and solidify that conscious consuming should happen in dispensaries. So like, we partner up with brands and as many brands, queer brands, we dial in, we do our introduction, we say, how can we help you? Because a part of my job, one of our focus is to lift up these brands so that these brands stay in existence.
And more visibility.
And so, when queer brands succeed, then the consumer has plenty of options. You know what I mean?
And that's what it's about, because consumer needs to have these options regardless, because you'd make really great tasting gummies. So it's just like, why shouldn't you be on the shelf next to all the big MSO brands or whatever?
Exactly.
But I think, because we've actually tried this a few times, it's maybe a really strange word to use, but like, we're an MBE, minority business enterprise. And so when we go to specific buyers and specific stores, we say like, oh, we're also a minority business enterprise. And if that's in your plan for diversity or your impact plans, then you should give you credits towards, to making, to achieve your goals for these plans that you put in the CCC approved. But a lot of people we found were just like, maybe they're not educated about the, world or whatever, or the worldview of their even customers, because they're just like, hey, I have a budget of $100,000 to spend, and that's all I care about, and I have to have diverse SKUs, and I just want to bring them in, but they may not have that minority kind of section, legacy section, queer section, whatever, on their shelves.
I think that's a little advanced for where the market is. It's not mature enough yet, because you see that in just consumer spaces that can't exactly that
have a whole pink section.
Yes, exactly. And so I think that's like the next phase of what's to come as we get more educated consumers and start to see those behaviors mirrored in the shopping in the cannabis space.
Yeah, because even the idea of having like different different language packaging, like having Portuguese packaging or Spanish packaging, and there's different populations in these areas that if you're speaking directly to them, they're like, oh, I'm buying that.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like, if you can speak directly to that audience and have that kind of, that you've built that bridge to them, like you can attain those customers and retain.
Absolutely.
Really quickly though, I do want to talk about these products before we go on too long. So a couple of things that immediately strike me is that, we're definitely going to get this on camera, Connecticut, the packaging is so bizarre to me. It has to be black and white, right?
Yes, it does.
So it has to be black and white, and the only red available is
it's the warning box and the warnings, and then you can only have you can only have a 1 inch by 1 inch logo on the package. That is the only brand.
It's really stretched the one.
Yes, exactly. Maximize it.
I have a 1 inch by 1 inch.
That's it. That was it.
The back has 2 tags on it. One is from the store. And one is
from you.
Okay.
So that's exactly. And I think that the restrictions have started to loosen for flower. You can have a color package. You can, strain names, they're still like removing vowels a lot of times if they are too appealing to children to try to get around that. But you can have a solid color package for flower. You cannot do anything like that for edibles. And the fear is always that it's going to be appealing to children. And
because this is called Coasting Cherry Punch. So this name is okay though, but not. That wouldn't be. You can use it on flower.
Yes, exactly. And the other thing too is that the DCP in Connecticut is who oversees the cannabis legal market.
Where's DCP?
The Department of Consumer Protection. And so we actually are just forming now a separate body to oversee cannabis specifically, but really the industry is run by pharmacists. And so you have to have a pharmacist on site for a certain amount of hours of the week if you're a hybrid location. But
it's not a medical industry. Well, is there?
Yeah, there's a strong medical market, and we also put out medical SKUs as well.
Can you do that under that single license?
Yes, exactly.
And
yes, exactly. And so you can do medical.
So you can do medical also, which is super interesting. But like what you're saying is that the products you're putting out, you potentially could have like a higher dose version of this in the medical market.
Yep, we do.
What are so this 5 mgs is standard in Connecticut.
That is the standard that is as high as you can go. 100 mgs per package.
And the medical side is what?
And the medical side is not as restricted or limited. And so we have 25 mgs for our medical grade. There are more potent gummies available on the market for sure, but we found that 25 is a good sweet spot for people who need.
They have to still use this type of packaging. So medical also. You
can't. No.
In your dream world, you'd want to use this.
Yeah, exactly. She's so cute.
And so, but you use these for displays.
Yes, exactly. Displays, and we have, signage and other ways to sort of attract folks. And then we do a lot of pop-ups, and not just, working with folks like Rich, but we sponsor drag brunches and drag shows as well, trying to find our niche in our community. Pride Month is obviously a huge month for us, right. And that is where we can really sink into our niche and let people know that we're
as
here.
A percentage, where do you think you're spending most of your marketing right now? Is it in cannabis stores and cannabis events, or is it outside of cannabis events?
I think it's more in the store. That's where you can mostly influence the product. I'm paying Jane a ton of money to advertise on their in-store menus and everything. I'm also, doing a lot of pop-up outreach. And the way that we try to work with retailers is being the brand that comes to the table with some kind of a plan that alleviates the need for them. Exactly. And so with Rich, whether it's working with him on doing cards for queer elders, or I'm a 200-hour registered yoga teacher, I do have some success with working with dispensaries where we host a class before it opens on like a Sunday morning. Okay. And then you can get a pack of our gummies for $1 with any purchase when the store opens. I want to
get to that. So, because immediately I think to myself, we have the same thing, right? Mm-hmm. How do you do sampling? Like, obviously you have what did you call them? Sober samples.
Sober samples.
Yeah.
Which were 100% trademark. We're still trademark. The sober samples, and then you have infused samples. Is there you can't do sampling in store, I'm assuming?
No, we can't give anything away in store. Connecticut has a gifting law that is pretty flexible. And so once somebody pays to attend an event, we then are in a private event category, and then it's just gifting, and so we have to sample it out. Yep, we have to sample it out as.
So you still have to send this out as it is to a dispensary.
So I send that to Butter, Stratford, which is right down the road from my house. Shout out to Butter, great group. But they essentially put it in their vault, wait for me to come in, and then I go in and I buy it, and then
you still have to the table like this.
Yes, exactly. It's going to go against my personal allotment, and then we have to pay the tax on the products, and so. But yeah, that's essentially the option. It's very similar to Massachusetts, and
that's exactly how we do it. Now, there was a memo that went out last year about pennying out samples.
Yeah,
it was right before Flower Expo.
Okay,
and it was like, "What do you like?" It was a weird memo.
Yeah,
and then everybody called Jason Bello over at Flower Expo, like, "What do we do about this?
Yeah,
it's just supposed to be an event we can So that was a little bit like, So the pennying out thing is definitely, some people are taking a hard line, and be like, it has to be. So arbitrary, like $1 or $5 or something like
exactly.
Some people are like, they can't tell me how much to charge for something.
Yeah,
who cares?
Yeah,
it's a penny.
It's a penny.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, what are you gonna do about it?
Yep,
exactly. We're trying to divert product.
Exactly.
I also come from the compassion side with a lot of this stuff because I also have my medical issues. The reason why I got into cannabis. Mm-hmm. So if I had my way, I would definitely be helping a lot of people.
Yeah,
as I could.
Same.
I actually make my mother's medicine all the time.
Yeah.
She has rheumatoid arthritis. She has a hard time moving around. Mm-hmm. And I make my mom's medicine still. To this day, I'll make 12 bottles. I'll hand it to her. It's very low THC still. It's like really high CBD. But like, I'll make all these formulas and stuff like that. And I really wish I could just give up more of stuff.
Yep.
Not because I want kids to get high.
No,
because I want reasonable, rational, responsible adults that are in pain or they might be going through chemotherapy. And I just would like, I don't, it's not the money, like give them the product.
Yeah.
Especially who don't have all this extra income to spend on all these products,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
I've definitely tried to do my best with that stuff, but they make it so hard.
Very difficult. Yep.
You had mentioned $1 though. So when it comes to that stuff, when you're talking to the store, are you in advance be like, all right, we're going to do this event. We're going to charge $1 for the next hour or whatever.
Yeah. So we pick a SKU. We ship them a case or however much based on the attendance.
Case sizes?
30 per units per case. And so we send it to them sampled out as $1 a pack. And then with any purchase. So then that also incentivizes the customer to buy something. So then it's a Sunday morning and they got like 20 or 30 customers right at opening. And that's great.
Exactly.
Everybody wins. And then they are going to make space for me and my products on the shelves. It's not that big of a hit to us budget-wise to facilitate something like that. And it's a win-win for everybody. You know, I just think that, but what I do love about this community and it, unfortunately being as restricted as it is that you do get people who are the most creative and ambitious that you work with. And so it's nice to see, you know, when it's just me and my partner, Steven. And so, it's just the two of us and he works full-time for our production facility.
So he's just making.
Yes. And so he works for Connecticut Contract Manufacturing, which is the largest manufacturer in Connecticut. He was recruited actually from Commonwealth Cannabis Company to go over and start that.
Cannabis.
Yep. Comcan. Yep. Right over here in the
So Comcan. So he was working there doing
edibles and beverages. Yep.
Edibles and beverages.
Yep.
Oh, so he was one of the people working on Sip and
Sip. He did Sip and Bite. He launched those. Those are all of his recipes. Yep. And so great team there. He learned so much and got recruited to start this facility in Connecticut. And when he sat down for the interview, he said, I have a brand I want to bring to market. I would love to be able to do that. And so if I'm going to, you know, relocate, let's make a deal. And so we did. And
on here, what did you call it?
Connecticut
Contract
Manufacturing. And so in addition
so he
to
works
us,
there. Got so
in
it. And
addition
you guys
to
own
us,
this brand.
he makes us, he makes Wana, he makes Camino, he makes a line of chocolates, he makes a couple lines of vapes. And so it's cool too, because you go into a dispensary and like some categories, half the category is made by him and his team. And so, you know, it's really nice, but it's allowed us to be really flexible and nimble because we are not coming from a fully funded backed, like, you know, we have.
Well, that's what I was wondering is it's like, okay, you're working at a Comcan, you go start your own thing. I know how much it costs to start a facility. So I'm like, how do you do that? How do you manage that? But like some people are able to do it and some people are like, but you can find alternative ways.
Yeah.
I'm always impressing upon people. It's like, you don't have to start from zero and build it. You can start at one because somebody's already done. They have the facility. They have a little corner. Maybe you can work in, you get licensed, you get badged, working your stuff.
Exactly.
And they'll lease that space to you, whatever they can. Speaking of money though, really quickly, what do these retail for?
$32.
And they wholesale?
Yep, 50%. Yep.
So $16.
Yep, $16 a unit.
Wholesale.
Yep.
Fantastic. And do you do like bulk pricing and all this other stuff?
Yep, we'll work with, you know,
so you're kind of like
yes, exactly. They can we can cut it down. Yep, absolutely. And we do the same thing for our medical pricing. We try to be really aggressive with that because we're both patients and benefit from the plant in so many ways that like we really want to make sure that that community is getting access and that
25 mixes, you know, that's a good
difference. Yeah, it is. And we put 20 pieces in our packs, so they're 500 meg packs. Most packs in the medical market in Connecticut are shaved down, and so you get 7 or 10 in a pack because they just are going off of what the total package megs are and trying to really upsell the price point that way. And that's just not our style.
Well, how about the 25 meg packs that are 500 in total?
Yep. They go for about $75.
$75.
Yep. But then you get discounts like Medical Mondays, We run promotions.
Taxes in
No,
the side either.
no taxes on the medical side. Yep.
What's the tax rate in Connecticut?
Oh God, it's like 30%. I swear to God,
It's
it's like it's up there because we also have potency tax on top of it. There's also an edible tax.
What do you mean SC tax?
And the more potent the product, the higher the tax.
How is that for?
It's formulated with a percentage of
That's so
yeah.
because I always think to myself, oh, of course, it's
Yeah.
based on percentage.
Yep, exactly. And so the edibles have a flower equivalent associated with them. That's how it's just
Specific.
yeah.
How it's the air standard
Yeah.
adult uses can be healthy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then for the medical side, that's
all white
That's
away.
all white
Yep,
away, okay.
yep. And the state of Connecticut has tried to make medical access more like widespread. They've waived the state fees, so now it's just the provider fee that you have to pay. And so a lot of times it's under $100. You can do it virtually and get your medical card the same day. For me, it was literally an hour after I hung up with the provider, and they just emailed it to me.
And so do you find that the medical market is like thriving, or is it
So I think it was when we
it's still
yeah, I think it still is. It could be sinking a little bit, but I am seeing from my own anecdotal evidence of like chatting with people and such, more people coming back to medical because there's more products that are available that once weren't available once the recreational market took over it. So we're getting more of the higher dose products, sublingual sprays, honey that's infused. Also, topicals are available medically.
topicals I don't use?
Can't do
No, easiest thing. So what are you going to take a tub and stick it in your what? Like, what do you mean you can't do? We can do any amount. I think topicals, there's no limit. You can put 1,000 mil.
We also dabs can't do NA10 dabs on they just increased the allotment of that to 70%, and so we'll see if that starts to spill over into
30%. And you can have a concentrate.
yeah at 70%. Yeah.
Vape. Then?
Oh, vapes. Yes, vapes are all fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as long as it's under 70%.
Yeah.
Okay. That's wild. Definitely an educational experience on the Connecticut market because we're neighbors, but we're also just like so different sometimes.
Yes, absolutely. And a lot of our customers are still going to Massachusetts to buy their flower because the prices are better. The availability is so much better. And I think also from a marketing standpoint, the opportunities to brand and build a relationship with the consumer is just like rife with opportunities simply because their packages don't look like.
I know. Well, if there was like a top thing you would change about the Connecticut market today, would it be the packaging or would it be something else?
I mean, I definitely think the packaging is a big one just because we're visual creatures and it's an opportunity to just...
It feels like you'd be in some kind of Stanley Kubrick movie. It's just all black and white packaging on a shelf. You're like...
Yeah, but then if you think about it from a fulfillment standpoint too,
inventory people
are having to like read these and they
You're
all
now
look
gonna
the
look at the
same.
back to be like,
exactly.
okay, this is Connecticut
and for
contract.
us, like we have some SKUs that have the same name but are in different doses. And so we ended up changing our 5 milligram names just to ease the burden on the inventory person to have to go and like
I never thought
fulfill that and not make a mistake and actually grab a medical dose when it's really supposed to be a 5 meg, Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be, there's going to be so many mistakes because they all look so similar.
Yep.
Wow, this is fantastic. Like, just as we start to wrap here, I always start thinking about like, what's next, right?
Mm-hmm.
So where do you see yourself kind of going from here? I'm going to ask you the same thing, Rich, in a second.
Yeah. So we are launching a couple new SKUs next month where THCv is now allowed in the Connecticut market. And so
it's converted tech.
Yeah. And so, so we'll be having a SKU coming out with a 1-to-1 THCv. And then, we're also going to have a high-CBD 40-to-1, option. And then from there, we're hoping to dive into the world of vapes and do some disposable liquid diamonds. Excited about that. And
It's a much bigger market.
yeah, exactly. And I think also like we're learning where revenue streams need to be coming from and also where we could fill a void in the market.
Are you break even or profitable right now?
We're profitable. So yeah, it's like, at the end of the day, like we just keep swimming and try to keep your head above water. We were not coming into this with a huge amount of capital or connections in the industry. We're just, two people who benefit from weed and really want to put good products out in the world that we use every day.
Yeah, the THCv thing is super interesting because I feel like a lot of, and again, the regulators don't really know, as well as like the vast majority of the population doesn't really know. But anytime you see like CBN, it's converted to like nobody's growing a bunch of THC and be like, let's go oxidize put it under the sun and let's wait 6 months for it to turn on CBN and then we'll go put it in our product. No, they're taking CBD or they're taking whatever analog and just converting a couple molecules to the CBN. Same thing with THCV, right? It's just like it all comes from a different, it comes from chemistry. Ultimately, right? So now it's being allowed in there. And so it's funny because it's like, I think so we have the CCC, but we also have MDAR, which does the hemp side of things. And so any MDAR compliant hemp can go into cannabis now. That was a couple of years since that.
And that's great.
But I think there was a big stink about, I think THCV, for some reason, they were just like crazy about it at one point. Like, we're going to get rid of THCV. I think they saw THC and they're like, that's
too much. Exactly.
But in our experience, in our R&D, I feel like THCV is one of those compounds that's a hit or miss for some people.
It requires education at the end of the day.
Well, effect.
And
some people, it's just like, oh, this is great. It's like a little caffeine. That I get. Like I'm going. I can do a bunch of housework. I can zone in focus. And other people, like, makes them maybe a little nauseous or upset stomach and stuff like that. So we haven't released a THCV product because we just haven't been able to like quite figure out how to do that right.
I think that also, trial and error is so important, especially with edibles or any product that you're using, because our endocannabinoid
to learn as like she's using.
Like our endocannabinoid systems are different.
Everybody's different.
I mean, women have more endocannabinoid systems than men just based on our reproductive systems. And so I think that, at the end of the day, start low, go slow, and find what works for you, because there's something for everyone.
And I feel like that's a lot of flower too. It's just like, I like these people. I've liked their products in the past. Let me try this one because they have that strain again. Whenever you go try, you're like, oh, it wasn't that great. But you just have this trial process. Plus, I think a lot of consumers are generally, especially if they've been consuming for a couple of years now, they're used to this trial experimentation. So. Interesting. All right. So for you, Rich, where do you see what's next on your agenda?
We're really focused on being in more states. So we have a really strong hold in the Northeast, but West Coast, my hometown, or my home state. I'm really excited to be venturing out there. We're going to put our dipping our toe into travel tourism.
Okay.
As well, just as a organic kind of like build off, because what we're noticing is that there's definitely areas of opportunity to create fun kind of trips for the LGBT community.
International or domestic or
starting domestic, but I mean we're looking at some really cool stuff, potentially international. When you look at statistics with LGBTQ folks and travel, it's crazy. And even like with my partner and I, when we are traveling, because that's one of our biggest passions, is we kind of look at what states have a medical program or what states we have a plug-in. And then when we're there, it's like, well, what can we do that, like, for instance, we were in Amsterdam a couple months ago, and we had a full-on itinerary of cannabis, like, fun things to do and enjoying it in such a beautiful place. And it really changed what vacationing was to us. It was such a like moment of like, I'm investing in a time and space that's catered to me in its entirety. I don't need to be policed or not do something. It literally is just kind of like, it makes your vacation that much better.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm so jealous because I think to myself, every weekend I've got like kids sports. I'm basically an Uber driver for my kids right now. And I'm like, I want to go to Amsterdam and have some fun. Like, seems so dreamy. But I think you're onto something though, because a lot of the gay friends that I have, they're vacationing all the time.
We're always traveling.
Particularly overlap. Think about it.
And so we're dipping our toe into that. That's exciting. But really just trying to create those strong bonds with like as many LGBTQ brands that are out there, grows that are out there, and really start to build this kind of like coalition or alliance to say like, hey, we both share some of the same difficulties. We both share some of the same experiences. How can we help? How can we help each other out? Because what we're learning right now in history right now is that nobody, especially the government, is going to protect us, and they're not going to help us, unfortunately. So we just kind of have to like pull up our sleeves and help each other out. And take care of it, and figure out how we could keep longevity for all of us, because everybody that I know, part of the community who has invested in cannabis in some way, shape, or form, you included, we're betting on ourselves. We've spent a lifetime of working for other folks. We've spent a lifetime of making other people millions and millions of dollars. And I think now more than ever, we're starting to realize that like no one's going to help us. No one is going to give us space. But we could lift up each other, and we can support each other, and we can invest in each other's projects, product, and whatnot. And we can create the life that we want to create with it. Because at the end of the day, we all have gone into this industry because we believe that this plant is powerful, and we believe that this plant has healing properties. And we are in a capitalist industry. That's money is important, and that's a harsh reality of it. But I do believe that we're stronger in numbers. I do believe that education matters. I do believe that community is so important. And as long as we continue to make sure that everything that we do in some way, shape, or form helps all those pillars, then we will survive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We will get through this.
It's longevity. You can't, it's really about longevity. Nobody's coming to save you. You've got to figure it out to be able to be in this industry for the long term. You've got to, that's why I ask about profitability sometimes. I'm like, all right, if you're profitable, you're one of the rare ones, right? And so as long as you can continue to be profitable, have a little, treasure box, save a little bit just in case for one day something happens, and some stores just like, hey, we don't want you anymore. You're like, well, that was like half our revenue, those, right?
Exactly.
So
I try to build community, and you're speaking to your consumers, and you're educating your consumers. They're going to come back, and the hope and pray is that consumers will then start dictating what's on shelves.
Ideally,
ideally. Like you look at Rooted In, and I look at their menu reflects their customer. There's a lot of marginalized brands. There's a lot of diversity in their menu. And so, I think that like it's kind of taking people to task. We understand that like the cheapest product is going to be purchased and potentially
there's a different audience.
It's a different audience. And I think that there's a way, and I think there's a responsibility for all retailers to look at their shelves and say, does this reflect the community that's coming in? Does this reflect Massachusetts? Are we offering enough SKUs or our shelf to mass only brands? Those types of things we need to talk about. You know what I mean? But I think that one of the strong things that the LGBT community has always had in our corner is our ability to cultivate culture and cultivate community. And so it's like leaning in on that and just redirecting our efforts and just kind of like positioning it in that way, because this community will forever lean in on each other, because that's just how it has to be. So it's just having that insight and having that like, conversations of how are we going to do this? Like, it's like even like with your company. I mean, we had when we first did our big queer dance party, it was the first like queer forward stoner event that Queer and Cannabis was going to do. And I was like so stressed out because I was like, what if no one is interested? Like, what if, I think so.
Because you don't know, right?
Because you don't know. I'm passionate in history. I'm passionate. I think that there definitely is something brewing here, but that's just me. You know what I mean? How do I convince other people to let care?
You're like thinking to yourself, are other people going to care about this?
Exactly.
I care about it.
Exactly. And then it's like such a vulnerable moment because like it means something to me. This isn't just like, this isn't just like a company that I want to like profit of. Like this is like a movement. These are untold stories. These are like, unsung heroes, like, and, I'll land the plane, but, one of the first companies that were there to like help sponsor was your guys' company. You're one of our first like activations and stuff like that. So I think that like having that advocacy, you know what I mean? Like being able to say like, what, I think that this right here is a segment of the cannabis community that's important. And I want to be able to like offer help. offer like that partnership, you know what I mean? And those things matter, you know what I mean? They matter tremendously because, you know, we, as much as like, you know, we are going to lean on each other, it's also important for our other partners in this game to recognize that we too matter, and that, like, you know, we like everyone else deserve like a seat at the table, and you know, we have stories to tell, and we have customers that are waiting to find products that they see themselves in. You know what I mean? Like, we can't do this alone. And so, you know, when you look at history, you know, we all may be completely squashed by big corporate cannabis at some point.
Yeah. If a year from now, we might be like, oh, we tried.
History repeats itself. But, you know, again, we have a unique opportunity to pump the brakes and try to figure out how the rest of this is going to play out. And I think that we have a good idea of like a plan forward. And, you know, at the end of the day, we are doing the best that we can. There's not a book to figure out what path we're going to take. I'm sure all of us would wish we had this book of like how to get us to this iconic moment where we want to go. But until then, we just are going to truck along. We'll have some great moments. We'll have some really shitty moments. But you know, as long as we have community, as long as we have conversation, and as long as we have mutual respect, like, what else can we ask for?
Exactly.
You know, what else can we ask for? So.
Yeah, that's true. Well said.
Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks for asking us.
Thank you, Rich.